Welcome to the Impact Business Show. I'm your host, Annalise Warren, a marketing agency CEO, business strategist, digital marketing mentor, wife, and mama of 4 little ones. Stay tuned for conversations with successful, purpose-driven business leaders, as well as practical marketing strategies that you can action right away. We are here to help you master your marketing, build your business, and change the world. So let's get into it. Hi, Tatiana. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, I'm really excited to dig into this because we're going to talk numbers today, and numbers are not my thing. I'm trying, but every time I think I've got it, my bookkeeper tells me I've got something wrong. So, I'm 3.5 years into my business and still struggling with this. Thankfully, it's something that I can outsource, but it would have been really great to have approached this better in our business from the start. So I'm really excited that that's what you help women do. So could you just introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about you?
Sure. So my name is Tatiana Sawyer, and I'm an US-based certified public accountant. So I'm an accountant, but I call myself a visionary accountant because I tend to do things differently. And I have a more holistic approach to clients who seek services of an accountant. I've been in business for about 15 years and worked mostly with small businesses. And the small businesses that I worked with, I started noticing, kind of 5-7 years into it, I started noticing certain patterns and certain similar themes. So I started kind of paying attention and analyzing. And now I call myself a numbers expert because I help women business owners make every decision in business based on numbers and grow their business and make it a success.
Yay. That's awesome. So you are also a mum. So how old are your kids?
So my daughter is 8 and my son's 5. So I have 2 kids.
So you've been running your business and in the midst of that had the kids. How have you balanced? Can you tell me a little bit about that story? Like, what's the challenges that you experienced? How do you do the juggle? What does that look like? Because I think our audience is lots of mums and potentially mums who are wanting to start their own business or trying to find what works for them. So just to hear different stories about how different women successfully approach that can be really helpful. So yeah.
So, running a business when you're a mom and running a business when you've never had children are 2 completely different experiences. So I have 15 years of experience, but I started out as a bookkeeper and then kind of had a number of clients that I worked with on a regular basis as a bookkeeper. Then I finished my college degree and I needed to get a license. So in order to get a license, I had to work for a licensed firm for 2 years. So what I did was I still kept a couple of my clients. So I was working all the time. I was working at my day job and then working on my clients at night because I always knew that I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be my own boss. So for 2 years, I worked for 2.5 years for a real CPA firm. And it was a very demanding schedule. During tax season, it's 60 or more hours a week. It's very stressful, deadline driven. And as soon as I got pregnant at the end of that period, the 2.5-year period, I quit. And I decided that I don't want the baby that was growing inside of me to undergo that stress of tax season and be born kind of with the stress running through her veins, sort of. So I quit and I continued with my 2 clients that I had before. It wasn't enough, meaning it was very little, but I started offering tax services. I started learning and growing. I mean, it was a very slow process, but it's actually good because it allowed me to be with my daughter. Well, first my daughter was born. So with my daughter, when she was little, I never had a babysitter. I had my mom helping out when I needed to go for a meeting occasionally, but when you become a mom, it's especially the first time, it's a shock, and it's something that nobody prepares you for. So when you are trying to do some work, well, first of all, your attitude towards work changes, and mine did. After I had my son, when it's two small children, it's having one seems like a vacation. So so when I had my son, I was working, doing my work at night or weekends, because during the day my husband would work and I would stay with the kids. And days started looking like Groundhog Day every day. You know that movie, Groundhog Day?
Yeah.
So same stuff every single day, repeat from morning till evening. So my work, what I did on the side, my business, was my escape from that Groundhog Day. So even though I worked in the evenings and I was exhausted because I, spent all my time with the kids during the day, and then in the evening I would do the bookkeeping work and the accounting work and the tax work, I was exhausted, but at least mentally that was my escape. And for many women, having something, a small business that they're passionate about or something they love doing, that becomes their escape when from that daily routine that's the same every day for many years. So I feel like that it was very powerful for me. And I think that every woman should have something like that happening to help her get through that early years of motherhood.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny how going to work or doing the work becomes the easy thing in your life. You're
Yeah.
like, this is so much easier than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and especially when it's something that you love. I mean, personally, if I had to go from kids to numbers at night time, oh my gosh, that's like not my thing. But when it is your thing and you're doing your thing, and then that really sustains you and you love it, and it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for telling that story. So how do we start smart and with this in mind from the beginning?
So I think that, and that's where many creative people, I mean, there probably is more, I don't know the statistics, but there's probably more creative folks in the world than finance driven folks. Although, like I said, I don't know if that's the case, but I feel like I work with many more creatives and moms as opposed to people who are in the financial world and who understand the numbers better. I feel like visionaries have passion often, and that's, I think, is the component that differentiates accountants from visionaries who start businesses. Actually, a client of mine once said, he was like, honey, accountants don't start businesses, visionaries do. And the reason is that visionaries have a vision, have an idea. So to start smart, you have to make sure that that idea makes sense. You have to run the numbers. I'll give you a little story to illustrate the concept. So when I was young, when I was 17, I went to, for the first time, and we had a class exchange trip, and we went to Germany. And in Germany, they took us to a water park, and it was my first time. So I rode everything in sight. And there was this swimming pool that was huge. And I wanted to dive off of the highest diving board, even though I've never done that before. So I go up and I'm terrified standing and looking down. But one thing that I thought of was that somebody already ran the numbers, because somebody already calculated that if they built this diving board, that you're not going to kill yourself by jumping down. So it's similarly, when you're starting a business or you want to start something, running the numbers is critical. It's the first step. And what I mean by that is calculate how much you need to invest upfront. Are there any costs that, I don't know, you need to buy? For example, a liquor store would buy inventory, right? Wine to stock its shelves. Similar to that, toy store would buy toys. So that initial capital investment, you need to know how much it is and how you're planning to fund it. If it's a service-based business or if it's a software platform, you need to understand what are those initial costs to develop or build it, and then what are the ongoing costs. Then you figure out how much you charge so that you can actually make a profit. Because many people make the mistake of focusing on the top line, never really paying attention to whether they're profitable. That's probably the most fundamental part of this process.
Yeah, a lot of the work that I do with new clients is around business design and saying, well, how much do you actually want to earn? Like, how much do you want to take home for your family versus what do you need to then put on top of that? What are you going to be your costs? So if you want $100,000 a year, great, you're probably going to have to earn 200,000 like coming in the door.
Right.
Around about. And then, well, how much do you actually want to work? Like, how many clients do you want? How many days do you want to work with? And then what does that mean that you have to charge per client? So a lot of the people I work with are service-based businesses, still definitely product-based as well. But we really break it down like that and go, okay, great. That means that I need to charge every client $5,000 in order to make the numbers work for me. Otherwise, I think a lot of people say like, yep, I want to start my own business because I don't want to have to go to an office. And then they do that and they end up working 100 hours a week for a really cranky boss and hating it and not getting paid what they're worth because they've said yes to everything. And it's just this downward spiral of I couldn't do it, or just working themselves to the bone. So is that kind of your experience as well?
Yes, and actually, it's my part of my personal experience also. I mean, I wasn't as business savvy as I am now when I started approaching it as a business. When I started out, I mean, I wanted to get more clients. And actually, let me back up for a second and explain the mentality of an accountant. And I think that it applies to many professionals. And in the US, a traditional accountant is someone who takes on more and more clients. And what happens is you typically charge a client once you do their taxes, and that's once a year. So between those tax filing seasons, typically clients sometimes pick your brain or make you, ask you to do something, and you do it for free because, technically you have this client and it's in, X in revenue. But what happens is that is I think it's a little bit of a failing system because in order to make a living, you end up taking, like you said, everyone. And then you end up having 300 to 400 clients. And the only thing that you can possibly handle is barely filing everybody on time. There's never time to actually review the business's numbers and help the owner incorporate different things to save money on taxes or to understand if the numbers make sense. I'll give you an example. I had a client for whom I started doing sort of like an outside CFO controller work. And what that entails is running reports, setting budgets, forecasting cash. So you forecast how much money you're going to have coming in and how much money you'll have to pay out in months to come. So 2 months into this budgeting process, we come up with the shipping costs that are significantly higher than what we projected. For the first month, my client says, we just sold more. The second month, I said, something's wrong here. And he started digging into it, and it turns out that the shipping company changed the way they were computing the prices of packages. So my client was consistently undercharging his clients on his website because the formula wasn't no longer working. Imagine if they discovered this at the end of the year because they never look at their numbers. They would have wasted a lot of money. They would have spent a lot of money and possibly shut down. So typically now many US firms, and I'm sure it's the same in Australia, many firms who are just doing the compliance part end up taking on a lot of clients and end up basically not really servicing the clients the way they need to be serviced. It's the support, it's the coaching, it's the hand-holding, it's the planning, it's the understanding, teaching you as a business owner to understand how to make decisions based on numbers. So because of that, it becomes this, never ending catch 22. And I'm approaching things very differently. I actually work less. And because, when I started out, I was taking everybody and I was undercharging myself and I was super busy, but my bank account didn't reflect that. So I shot myself in the foot, as we say, in that sense. And it took me 5 or 6 years to get out of it. And not because I didn't run the numbers, but I never really thought that there could be a different way. And now I know that there's always a different way to do things. I needed some self-confidence. I needed some time. When I had my children, I really lost a lot of self-confidence, and it took me a while to get back on track. But um, I hope that other moms who are starting out can skip that period and understand, catch themselves. You know what? I really should review my pricing, or I should review my packages. And that's what can actually make a difference between making money or barely surviving and working, like you said, 100 hours a week.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I totally agree with it, with all of that. And I think that when you do, it does come down a lot to that self-confidence and that self-worth. And if we're so conditioned to go to work, like to go to school, to go to university or college, to get a job, and we work on an hourly rate, it's like, here you go, there's your X amount. And so we take that, 20, 30 years of conditioning into our businesses, and we think that we're worth, $40 an hour, or
Yeah.
whatever that amount is. And when we are running our business, especially service-based businesses, we are providing, we're helping people with a solution, and like with a problem, we're helping them with transformation. And people aren't paying for time, they're paying for the transformation. And so it is really about charging for the value of that, and it's an exchange of value, and not pulling yourself back down to, but I only spent this many hours. I mean, my husband's a tradesman. He was a carpenter for most of his career, and when we started our business, he would quote based on the hours. Like, he'd go, oh well, it's only going to take me this many hours, and so that maybe that would be like $500, and then would look in the marketplace and other people were charging 5,000, and I was like, no, well, we're not going to charge that just because. And he was just, at the time we were happy to just be working from home and earning the same amount. But then you realize, oh, hang on, there's other expenses. And then when you get staff, you're like, wow, there's really other expenses. And so really coming back to that, how much do you want to work? What do you want to earn part? Would you mind explaining a bit about the profit first system? Because
Sure.
I know you're a profit first professional, and I was telling you just before we started that I've discovered profit first this year, 3 years into running my business. And I have a business degree, like, yes, it's in marketing, but like, it's business. And when I was reading this book, I just could not believe that there's a system, there's a way of doing things that can actually, like, there's rules. You can put things where you have money coming in, and you can set rules for yourself in terms of percentages that work, that make everything flow better and really take the stress out of the numbers, because the decisions have already been made for you. So I'm probably just confusing people. So if you could explain a little bit about that for people, that would be great.
Awesome. So Profit First is a system by Mike Michalowicz. He's an author in the US and lives in New Jersey, actually next state over. The main premise of the book and the system is that we as human beings are often irrational when it comes to money. And we make decisions as business owners often by just looking at our bank account. Oh, I have $50,000 in the account. Cool. I can afford to buy this new truck that I always wanted. But the reality often is that tomorrow you have some material costs coming out or whatever, and you no longer have the 50,000, you have 10. So you can't afford that. And then that system, that approach is fairly common, among business owners around the world. But Profit First teaches you to be proactive, not change your habits, but create mechanisms that prevent you from spending what you don't have. So Profit First system, according to the system, there are a couple of premises. Number one, you create your 5 main accounts. The accounts are the income, where you'll receive all of the revenue that your business generates, your operating expenses, so how much you need to run your business, your owner's compensation. So you're in business to make money for your family, and we should be building businesses around our lives, not the other way around. Oftentimes it happens so that people start businesses and then their lives revolve around the business. So the owner's compensation account is to actually create compensation for your efforts that you can take consistently. The fourth account is the tax account. I mean, everybody knows what it is, what it's for, and why we have to pay taxes. And then the last one, well, actually, it's technically the first one, is the profit account. So your owner's compensation is compensation for your time and effort compared to if you were working for somebody else. So it's compensation for your time, for your work ethics, for your work effort, whatever it may be. If you were to hire somebody else to perform all those tasks, that person would be paid that amount of money. Now, since you are the one who's doing it, you get owner's compensation. Profit, on the other hand, is your reward for being in business. And in Profit First, this typical equation, sales minus expenses equals profit, is transformed to be sales minus profit equals expenses. What that means is that when you start a business, and remember we talked about the importance of running your numbers first. You set your goals. First of all, what your business is going to be, whom are you going to charge, where are you going to make money, and then how much you're going to charge, how much your expenses will be. Now, you should also think about how much do you want to keep in profit. So after you've paid yourself for the effort, for the time, how much do you want to keep in profit? And there are certain tables in the book that give you some guidelines, but let's say it's 10%. So first, you take your sales, you take your 10%, put it in the profit account, and that is your reward for being in business. That's your reward for taking the risk. Now, the rest, 90%, is expenses. Now, if your expenses are more than 90%, for example, including your compensation and so on, then you really can't afford it. It's that simple. So I'll tell you a story of how I came into Profit First. It's actually, I came into Profit First a little backwards because a client of mine had a business, and he was always struggling with cash flow because he needed to pay large sums of money at certain points. And one particular year, he got into a point where he had $1 million in debt. I mean, it's a huge amount for a business owner. So he read this book and he texted me, we're doing Profit First. I've set up the accounts, start transferring money in these percentages. So I started doing that. I mean, I'm a bookkeeper. I was a bookkeeper. I got paid to do, and I did what he wanted me to do. So it was pretty simple. Then a year later, where he would normally borrow in September was his kind of cash dip point, he stopped borrowing. And 3 years later, his debt was down 50%. Then I finally read the book, completely fell in love with the method, went and joined Profit First Professionals. But I saw it in action before I actually knew the system. So I know that it can do miracles. But what my client did, which is something that I haven't seen before, was that he went, and even in New York City, he had 2 rental spaces, which are huge rents. He went and negotiated a rent reduction. It's something that's unheard of, especially back then. So he also negotiated other things. He had some debt accumulated. So he went and negotiated with vendors and said, listen, I want to pay you. Let me give you future dated checks for the next 10 weeks. I'll pay down the old balance, but I'll also be sending you a check for the new balance every week. So all of these creative strategies helped him significantly reduce his debt and be a much stronger company. He was extremely conscious of the expenses, and he started planning. He started looking at the future months and when, let's say, a cash dip would be expected, or whether he can afford to hire someone. Because if you can see how your cash is projected to be in the future, let's say 3 to 6 months, you know if you can afford to hire a new staff member. Otherwise, it's just guesswork. So profit first, I mean, this is just the main premise, the 5 main accounts, but then there are other things like making your bill payments every 10th and 25th of the month, and making your transfers on the 10th and the 25th of the month, and so on. So it's a very powerful system, and I've seen it in action. And if handled correctly, if you don't borrow from your tax account or your profit account to pay your operating expenses, you can actually build a very strong business.
Yeah, I found it honestly amazing, because then I was just kind of making it up. Like the money comes in, the bills are there, I would pay them. Like when I got invoiced from freelancers or from, contractors or software or whatever, we would just pay it. And then whatever was left, when my personal credit card came in, we would have that. I would pay it, and I would hope that there was going to be enough
Yeah.
there. And thankfully, it's a service-based business, so we didn't have a whole heap of expenses, but there was no real thought gone that went into it. And so for me, it's such a relief to know that every 2 weeks I'm looking at the numbers, and I don't need to think about it between then, because on the 10th I go in, I separate everything that's accumulated into the other, into all of the accounts. And then I pay the bills, but I'm paying myself, and I'm the profit, and I'm paying our actual, our owner's compensation from based on the percentages that have come in. And if that's not enough, or if I'm not happy with that amount, then I know every 2 weeks that I need to do something about that. So I'm going, okay, so now these next 2 weeks, who do I need to invoice? How can I get a client? What's going to, I know straight away.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was been great. And the profit account is so much fun, because then every 3 months you get to take half of it and just spend it. So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
fun money. I call it fun money.
it is fun money. It is. So thank you for explaining that much better than I could have. And if people haven't read this Profit First book, then do. So Tatiana, tell me more about your book called Dream Bold, Start Smart.
So the book is for 2 people. One is a mom whose kids are a little older, so she finally has time for herself. And she always wanted to start something. She always wanted to have something that's hers. And the financial side of a business overwhelmed her. So in my book, I set the stage, and I give that woman, that mom, a step-by-step process. Easy, simple, plain English, easy to follow and easy to understand. And I talk about things like, should you have a partner? Many women, especially moms that I've met, that self-confidence forces them to see if maybe they can partner with someone and split risks. But I'm actually a big believer that partnerships rarely work. And I explain the risks and the benefits of having a partner in the book. It's just one example. Then the book is also for creatives who work for somebody else, secretly dreaming about having their own business. Creatives and moms are 2 of my main client categories. And what I've noticed is that both of them are overwhelmed often by the numbers, by money, by tax matters and everything. So they just kind of don't pay attention to it, put it on a back burner, and don't even touch it. I believe that when it comes to numbers, you shouldn't fake it till you make it. It's an American expression. You should face your numbers. If you understand how the math works, just like I explained in the beginning, you will be much further than someone who puts it on the back burner. So in the book, I go over partnerships, do you want a partner? If you do, this is what you should pay attention to. Investors. I always thought that not everybody needs investors. Actually, far from everybody needs an investor. But a client of mine, when I interviewed him for my book, he was actually looking for investors for many years. And he told me that he thinks everybody should look for an investor, because he says, if you find one person who's willing to write you a check for your idea, that's a good idea. We talk about things like setting yourself up for taxes, setting yourself up for profit. So I mentioned profit first as part of the cash management chapter. Pricing. There's price psychology, how to price so that it's profitable for you and people are willing to buy. People see the value and think that there's a fair exchange between price and the value that they're getting. And other things that just set your mind to it so that you feel confident and don't feel that anxiety that numbers is not your thing, or you were never good at math or whatever. And it's basically to enable someone who maybe would never have started a business, to give them something, to give them confidence to start that business and do it confidently. I'm repeating myself a little bit, but it's okay. The book is meant to bring my expertise to people who need it most and often can't afford someone like me. Because I've been very clear on how many clients I want, my prices had to increase drastically. So clients work with me and they pay, significant amount of money, but people who just want to start out and need that advice, need to make their decisions correctly and not waste money. They are the ones who really rarely can afford a service of someone like me. So I wanted to create a book that breaches that gap, that gives my expertise, makes it affordable and accessible to other people.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm a big proponent to that. That's a big part of what we do with our marketing mentor program, is make professional marketing services accessible for those that are just starting out, or whose business model just doesn't support that and won't support that, because that's not what they want. When they did their business design, they just they wanted different things. So thank you so much for explaining that. I think that a book like this would have helped me so much, just to feel more confident in the numbers, because I did just ignore it for so long. And thankfully, because we're a service-based business and because we have clients that love us, like, it worked out okay. But it could have been a very different story. And I think, something like this, to be setting your mind to it early, because for me, like, finance and legal side were kind of like, oh yeah, like, and then you realize that actually they're kind of like the legs of the stool that are holding everything else up. And so we can't run our business without money. We probably started it for money, so we should start thinking about it right at the beginning. So how can people get their hands on this book? When is it out?
It's coming out in March, but the pre-order should be available soon. Right now I have a page for the early pre-book, and people who pre-order the book early will get special release bonuses. And so the book is available. The pre-order page is available on my website, talktotatiana.com, and you can sign up and follow.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Tatiana, for joining us today. And I'm sure that we will be in touch again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Impact Business Show. 2 things you should know before you go. First, come and join the party. I'm live with free marketing training in the Social Marketing Method Facebook group every single week. That's where you can ask questions and get the answers you need to simplify your strategy and amplify your income. Go to annalisewarren.com/group to join and come and network with an incredible community of like-minded business owners. Now, second, if you have got any value from this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe, and share it out on your socials. Your support helps us reach more purpose-driven entrepreneurs and increase our impact in the world. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Bye.